पवित्रवतु ॐ चोदयेत्रे सुनृतानां चेतन्ति सुमतीनां यज्ञं दधे सरस्वती।
Hello to all of you. I am Dr. Samidh Pawaskar, heading Department of Biochemistry in KJ Somaiya College. Today I'll be talking on one of the important part of biochemistry. Let us first, I'll introduce you about biochemistry. Biochemistry is rightly called as molecular logic of living world. It is actually the chemistry behind the biological processes, or you can also call it as a chemical language of life, be it a human, animals or plants. As you can see there, biochemistry has wide different areas coming under it, starting from chemistry, structural biology, microbiology and immunology, pathology, molecular pharmacology, molecular and cellular physiology, developmental biology, genetics and other biological sciences, which may include food sciences, endocrinology and many other branches, out of which I am going to focus today on endocrinology, one of the important area of biochemistry. We all know that the human body is under fine control of brain. Whatever the organs do, they get their message from the brain. The sensory input is given to the brain by the sensory organs of the body. The data is received and concluded by the central nervous system, and then the messages are given to the rest of the organs of the body, and all the organ functions or follow whatever order received from the brain. Now, how the brain communicates and regulate this function or the activity, and this is with the help of two different systems. One is the nervous system and second one is the endocrine system. Next, the nervous system is the way by which the brain controls with the electrical signal, whereas the endocrine system, apart from the nervous system, it controls via the chemical secretions. Both are equally important, and there is a fine network of both the nervous and the endocrine system which is spread throughout the body. The nervous system, there is a fine meshwork of neurons. The nerve impulses are conducted across the neurons, and hence the messages are delivered to the rest of the body organs. Similarly, the endocrine system, it is instead of electrical signal, the only difference is it is via chemicals, and these chemicals are nothing but the hormones. Okay, so hormone is actually the language by which the endocrine system communicates with the different organs of the body. Next. Now, I would like to stress what is endocrine. We are saying endocrine. What is endocrine? There are three types of secretions actually in the body. As you can see there, endocrine, paracrine and autocrine, out of which, as you can see, autocrine, auto means cell. Okay, the secretion of these cells, they act on the cell itself. That is why they are called as autocrine secretion, whereas the cells which secrete or their secretions acting on the neighboring cells, therefore they are called as paracrine secretion. Whereas the endocrine, endo means within and crine means secretion. So secretion, as you can see here, the secretion of these cells is within the blood. Okay, it is within the blood, and via the blood it then will be taken to the different areas and different organs of the body where they will have their physiological or biochemical activity. Okay. Hence these glands are called as endocrine glands, and these endocrine secretion are in the form of the chemical language or the chemical message. Just now I told you, nothing but hormone. Now what is hormone? Hormone is nothing but, now we can define hormone as a chemical messenger secreted in trace amounts by one type of tissue, and then it is carried via blood to the different target tissue which may be situated elsewhere in the body, where it will have its biochemical or physiological activity. These hormones chemically are of four major types, or there are four classes. One major class is proteins and peptides, second steroids, then amine derived from amino acids, and fourth eicosanoids. Next, protein or peptide hormones. As we all know, proteins, they contain amino acids. So those protein hormones or the peptide hormones, they are made up of more than 3 amino acids. They are water soluble. Receptors of this cell, receptors of these hormones are located on the cell surface. I'll come to it slightly later. Act via the second messenger system. These 2 points I'll explain slightly later with the mechanism of action. The example of the protein or the peptide hormones are insulin, the well known hormone, glucagon, oxytocin, vasopressin, etc. Next, steroid hormone. This is a second class of hormones. They are derived from cholesterol, that is the parent compound. Naturally, since they are derived from a cholesterol, they are water insoluble or lipid soluble, cytoplasmic or nuclear receptor, and they initiate protein synthesis. Again, these two I'll explain slightly later. Example of steroid hormones are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. The sex hormones are the example. Then aldosterone, cortisol or corticosterone, these are the other example. Next, amino acid derived. This is a third major class of hormone. They are derived from, instead of protein, these hormones are derived from single amino acids, and either they behave like a protein hormone. For example, epinephrine is an example. It behaves like a peptide hormone, whereas thyroid hormone, it is another example of amino acid derived hormone which behaves like a steroid hormone. Examples of these hormones include melatonin, which is derived from amino acid tryptophan, whereas thyroid and adrenal medullary hormone, which are derived from tyrosine. Okay, next, eicosanoid. This is the fourth class of hormones derived from 20 carbon fatty acids. Eicosa stands, or in Greek means 20. Sanoids. These hormones have derived their name because they are actually derived from 20 carbon fatty acid, which is arachidonic acid, involved in reproduction or reproductive function, inflammation, blood clot formation, regulation of blood pressure and gastric secretions. 3 major classes of eicosanoids: prostaglandins, prostacyclins, and thromboxanes and leukotrienes. Next. Now, let me elaborate on this. We are studying hormone. As you know, hormone is the chemical language by which the endocrine communication takes place, okay, or by which the brain controls the rest of the body. Hormones are definitely important because they are the means by which the message is conveyed. However, hormone cannot do its role, or it cannot act at all if there are no hormone receptors on the target cell. The hormones which are secreted in the body, they may wander through all the cells. Okay, as you can see, most hormones, they circulate. They are secretions which are put in blood. So blood can take them to all the different tissues. However, then all the hormones will go to all the tissues. Then which tissues respond to which hormone? Okay, that depends only and only on the receptors which are located on the different tissues. Those tissues having receptors which are specific for specific hormone, like hormone A, as you can see here, has the specific, this particular cell has a specific receptor for hormone A. This target cell has specific receptor for hormone A only. So this target cell will respond only to hormone A. This target cell, as you can see, it has receptors for hormone B. So it will stimulate it, or it will respond only to hormone B, whereas if you can see this particular target cell, it can respond both to A and to B because it exhibits both the receptors on the cell surface. Okay, so actually hormone is definitely important, but the receptors are much more important than the hormone, because if the cells do not have receptor to the particular hormone, the hormone becomes useless. And we have, I am going to talk on diabetes later. There is one such disorder where progressively the individual loses the receptors and thereby the disorders takes place rather than the hormone itself. Okay, I am going to do it slightly later. So hormone receptors is very important. Any target cell will function or will receive the hormone only with the help of hormone receptors. Where these receptors are located? Okay, some time back I told you protein hormones are water soluble, right? And whereas your steroid hormones are lipid soluble or water insoluble. Naturally, something which is water soluble, you all know that the cell membrane is made up of a lipid bilayer membrane, right? So being a lipid bilayer membrane, if it is a water soluble hormone, that hormone cannot easily enter the cell, right? It cannot cross this lipid bilayer. Whereas if it is lipid soluble hormone, as you can see here, lipid soluble hormone can directly cross and it can enter the next cell crossing this lipid bilayer membrane, because it can easily get dissolved and go inside. Okay, this is the way by which steroid hormones act, because they are water insoluble. They can directly cross this membrane barrier, come inside. Okay, inside these hormones bind to their specific receptors. So receptors of steroid hormones will be located inside the cell because they can cross the barrier. Either it will be in the cytoplasm or in the nucleus. These hormones then bind to their receptor, go inside, and then here they will stimulate next the activity, gene regulation, and this gene regulation as the gene expression. With the gene expression, the mRNA will be synthesized. The mRNA comes out, has protein synthesis along with the ribosome, and then that protein will bring about the actual targeted biochemical reaction. Okay, so this is the way by which steroid hormone act, whereas protein or peptide hormone, unlike steroid hormone, cannot directly enter inside, right? It will have to cross this lipid bilayer, which is not possible for a protein hormone. So what a protein hormone will do? Protein hormone will have their receptor located on the cell surface, so that when it binds to its receptor on the cell surface, as you can see here, then it needs some second person to deliver the message inside. And this is a second messenger system which is required by the protein or peptide hormone. Usually the second messenger is cyclic AMP. The protein and hormone, the hormone and receptor complex then stimulates enzyme called as adenylate cyclase, and this adenylate cyclase then converts ATP to cyclic AMP. Cyclic AMP then carries the message inside the nucleus, and then the cascade remains the same. Thereafter, the reactions are same for steroid and protein hormone. The gene expression will take place, mRNA comes out, protein will be synthesized with ribosome, and protein will bring about the rest of the effects. Okay. Now, this protein can be a transport protein, can be enzyme to speed up any other reaction, or this protein which is synthesized in both the cases can be another hormone. Okay. So that hormone, the message of the first hormone received by one cell, it may produce the next hormone, and that hormone can go further and carry the message. Okay. This is a type of relay system. Okay. I will explain you with the help of, it is called human endocrine system. Let us have a quick look on different organs. The major endocrine glands of the body, starting with hypothalamus, there is pineal gland, pituitary, thyroid near the larynx, parathyroids are just behind the thyroid glands, adrenal glands atop of kidney, then pancreas situated in between stomach, and the reproductive organs. These are the major endocrine gland, and all of them are in fine tuning with each other. Okay, they go hand in hand, relaying one message delivered to the next tissue, and then it goes further. I will just explain this in a hierarchy. Next slide. Okay, before that, the hypothalamus, the entire control, as I said, again lies in brain. And if you can see here, a small area of the brain controls the entire activity, and it is called as hypothalamus, lies at the base of the brain, and this is the major coordination center which controls the entire endocrine system. Next. Yeah, this shows the hierarchy. As you can see, the different sensory organ takes up the messages from the different or input of the sensory impulses go to the central nervous system of the brain. The central nervous system, as just now we have seen, it has that small area which is your hypothalamus. This is the major center of your endocrine system. Hypothalamus is the first endocrine gland to receive the message from the central nervous system. No other gland can receive the message directly. Okay. As I said, major coordination area. Hypothalamus then sends message to the different organs of the body, either via pituitary or directly to the different endocrine glands. There are some endocrine glands which come under the pituitary control. They receive their message from the hypothalamus via pituitary, whereas some endocrine glands like pancreas, adrenal medulla, etc., they receive their message directly from the hypothalamus. As you can see, hypothalamus sends hypothalamic releasing factors or hypothalamic hormones which then stimulate the pituitary. Pituitary is a small area which is situated just below the hypothalamus in the brain itself. Pituitary is divided into two lobes, anterior and posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary, in response to hypothalamic releasing factor, secretes in turn 6 different hormones: ACTH, corticotropin, thyrotropin. Corticotropin stimulates adrenal cortex or adrenal gland. Thyrotropin, it stimulates thyroid gland. Follicle stimulating and utilizing hormones, these are the sex hormones, and they stimulate the sex organs. Somatotropin, also called as growth hormone, and prolactin, these are the other hormones which are secreted by anterior pituitary in response to the hypothalamic stimulation. As far as posterior pituitary is concerned, or posterior lobe of the pituitary is concerned, posterior pituitary secretes 2 most important hormones, oxytocin and vasopressin. Vasopressin is also called as antidiuretic hormone. Oxytocin and vasopressin then have their own target tissues. Now, there are 2 other important endocrine glands: pancreas, islets of Langerhans of pancreas, they come under direct control of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus directly stimulate pancreas, and the pancreas in response to it releases 4 different hormones, 3 major, 1 less studied, 3 hormones, insulin, glucagon, somatostatin, and pancreatic polypeptide is the 4th one. The adrenal medulla in turn secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine under the stimulus of hypothalamus. This entire system, of course, these secondary target tissue have their ultimate targets, which are various organs, as you can see here, and that is how as you can see here, this endocrine system has been spread throughout the body and takes up the message of the brain to the different organs. Next, coming to now each endocrine gland, starting with pituitary. As I told you that hypothalamus majorly controls the body via pituitary. Pituitary, as you can see here, it is the area which is just below the hypothalamus, hence it receives the message directly from the hypothalamus. Pituitary in turn has 2 lobes, the anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary, just now I told you, secretes 6 different hormones, whereas posterior pituitary secretes 2 important hormones. We will see first the posterior pituitary. Next, posterior pituitary, also called as neurohypophysis. This neurohypophysis secretes 2 most important hormones. One is antidiuretic hormone, and or it is also called as vasopressin. Antidiuresis. What do you mean by diuresis? Diuresis is the urine, right? Diuresis is the process in which excessive urine is formed. Okay, so antidiuresis, that means this hormone stop the excessive formation of urine. That means it especially conserves body's water, and hence this particular hormone, it regulates through the kidneys retention of water, and this is the most important hormone as far as the water balance of the body is concerned. Okay, oxytocin is the second hormone secreted by the posterior pituitary. Oxytocin, it has 2 most important functions. It initiates uterine contractions in or during the childbirth. This is especially important hormone, especially towards the end of the gestation period, that is during the childbirth, okay, during the delivery. Okay, the uterine contraction, the contractions of the pregnant uterus are very important, because it is the hormone which causes the childbirth. Okay, so this is done, this is most important hormone as far as the childbirth or the contraction of pregnant uterus is concerned. Then secondly, it also has its role in lactation. It also is important for lactating mammary tissue. The moment the child starts suckling at the breast, the moment the impulse is received, it is taken to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, in response to this stimulus, then releases oxytocin. Oxytocin then via blood is taken to the lactating mammary glands or mammary tissues, where it causes contractions of the myoepithelial cells. Okay, and that causes milk let down in the alveoli of the breast, and then the child gets this milk. Okay, this of course we may take time to study, but it actually happens in the fraction of second. The moment the child starts suckling at the nipple of the breast, immediately the milk starts flowing. The next, however, as you can see here, the structures of these 2 hormones, they are the peptide hormones, the structures are almost similar. The only difference is phenylalanine and isoleucine is replaced, or this is the one point of difference, and the second one is the arginine and leucine. Rest, the hormones are very similar to each other except at 2 levels, and therefore these hormones can take over each other functions. Therefore, the deficiency of these hormones is very, very rare. because if one hormone is deficient, the second hormone can do its function 1/6 of the original hormone capacity. Okay, so deficiency is very less. Next, very rare. Next, yeah, the deficiency disorder of posterior pituitary, it is called as diabetes insipidus. It is especially ADH deficiency. As I said, it's a very rare disorder. Partial or complete absence of ADH. Urine output, yes, antidiuretic hormones is one which controls the water. Okay, it conserves the water. That means if the hormone is absent naturally, there will be excessive diuresis. So excessive urine formation, the urine output increases as much as 12 to 15 liters. The normal is 4 to 6 liters per day. It increases to as much as 12 to 15 liters. Naturally, since the water is lost, the thirst centers it is constantly stimulated. The person feels thirsty all the time. It takes or drinks more and more water. Water keep losing from the body. So, actually the water remains flushing through the body. Okay, and the person definitely will have tendency to dehydration and wash out. It is, however, can be treated with injections of synthetic vasopressin. Next. Anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary, in response to the hypothalamus, releases 6 important hormones. The first hormone is ACTH or adrenocorticotropic hormone. The function of this hormone is to stimulate adrenal cortex, and in response to this, adrenal cortex then secretes its own hormones. Next, the thyroid stimulating hormone is the second hormone, which is secreted by anterior pituitary in response to the hypothalamic stimulation. The thyroid hormone then stimulates thyroid gland, and thyroid gland in response to this stimulation secretes thyroid hormones. Next, follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone, these are the male and female sex hormones. Follicle stimulating hormone in female, they are also called as reproductive hormones. Females, they stimulate estrogen production and maturation of ovum. Males stimulates sperm production. Luteinizing hormone in females stimulates ovulation and estrogen production, whereas in males it stimulates the testosterone production, that is a male sex hormone. Next, last two, growth hormone, also called as human growth hormone, stimulates increase in the size of muscles and bones. Prolactin. Prolactin is very important as it stimulates milk production. Now, just now I told you about oxytocin. As we have just now seen that oxytocin is also important as far as lactation is concerned. This is another hormone which is important for lactation, but the basic or slight difference between these two hormones, prolactin is required for the synthesis, okay, or formation of the milk in the breast cells, whereas the oxytocin is required for giving or for the suckling. Okay, so it lets down the milk from the alveoli so that the child can obtain it. Okay, so that is the only difference between prolactin. Prolactin is involved in the synthesis of milk by the alveolar cells, whereas the oxytocin is important for letting the milk out of the cells. Okay, next. Yeah, coming to now each anterior pituitary gland, adrenal gland. As you can see, these are of course the kidney. Adrenal glands are situated at the superior poles of the kidney, and internally these adrenal glands are divided into two portions, the outer cortical portion and the inner medullary portion. Okay, this cortical and medullary portions are secreting two different hormones. Okay, we have just now studied the classification of hormone. You know what are protein hormones and steroid hormone. It is the cortical portion, the outer portion of the same gland, it secretes steroid hormone, whereas the inner portion, that is the medullary portion of the same hormone, secretes amino acid derived hormone. So although the tissue or the gland is same, the two areas secrete hormones which are chemically quite different from each other. Next, adrenal cortex It releases two most important hormone. One is called as mineralocorticoid because it controls the mineral or electrolyte balance. The major function of this is to reabsorb sodium and secrete potassium in the urine. Okay, that is why it is called as mineralocorticoid, and the example of mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. Now, the second hormone which is synthesized and secreted by adrenal cortex, I am talking about the outer region of the adrenal cortex, okay, which secretes steroid hormone. So, naturally aldosterone is a steroid hormone. Similarly, the second type of steroid hormone which is secreted by cortex is called as cortisol, or it is also called as glucocorticoid. Gluco means glucose, right? The hormone gains its name because it controls the glucose level of the blood. Okay, mineralocorticoid because it controls the mineral balance, whereas glucocorticoid, it controls glucose level. It usually decreases or increases glucose level. Okay, so cortisol can function by increasing glucose level, especially with the help of gluconeogenesis. Next, adrenal medulla, the inner portion of the adrenal gland. Inner portion secretes amino acid derived hormone called as epinephrine, norepinephrine. Then they are secreted and they are stored in chromaffin vesicles. As I have told you, they are amino acid derived hormone, and these epinephrine, norepinephrine, they are usually called as emergency hormone. That is because they are mostly released in the situation of emergency. I always tell my student, emergency is not, don't imagine an emergency of hospital. Okay, emergency can be any situation which is not planned. Okay, suppose if I always give example of, suppose if you want to catch a bus, okay, or if you see your train approaching, okay, it's not a pre-planned. The moment you see, the alarm goes on. Okay, the brain concludes, the sensory input is already inside, the brain has concluded that I am already late for my lecture. Okay, this is the my last chance. So, the moment you see the bus or the train coming, you start running. Okay, see, in a fraction of second, your brain has received the message, your sensory organ have given the message, brain has concluded, and the message passes to the brain, or from the brain it goes to the adrenal medulla. Adrenal medulla will secrete this emergency hormone, and when you run, naturally you need excess energy, excess glucose. The moment you require it, you start running. We don't even think whether the glucose is coming, right? So, this glucose is provided by the epinephrine. Okay, so epinephrine is therefore called as an emergency hormone. It prepares person for any emergency situation. Okay, now the disorders of adrenal gland, two disorders, Addison's disease and Cushing syndrome. Addison's disease, the gland fails to produce enough glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoid is hormone especially responsible during, or it is required for the recovery phase. Okay, when we suffer from a long time illness, the recovery phase, the body has to heal. Okay, and that time it is very important, this particular hormone plays a very important role. The Cushing syndrome, it is hypercortisolism, overproduction of glucocorticoid. Excessive glucocorticoid is also harmful. Okay, so because it will have its own side effect, so it results the Cushing syndrome. Next, yeah, this is a particular picture. You can see the person, normal appearance of the person is lost in Cushing syndrome, and you can see this hunch is gained by the lady. Next, thyroid and parathyroid glands. These are the two glands which are again very important. Thyroid gland located just below the larynx. Your parathyroid gland, they will be just posterior or behind the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland in turn is divided into closed vesicles. These are called follicles, And these follicles are internally lined by a cuboidal epithelial cell enclosing the matrix which is called as colloid. The thyroid hormones are synthesized and then in the follicular cells and then secreted and stored in this colloid. And then whenever it is the message is received from the hypothalamus, the hormones will be released into the blood from the follicular cell. Next. Yes, the function of thyroid hormones. The most important function of thyroid hormone is to control or to increase the metabolic rate of the body. It increases the basal metabolic rate and therefore it increases in the use of oxygen for the different metabolic activities of the body by affecting various different functions. Next. Disorders of thyroid hormones. Goiter, which is well known disorder of thyroid hormone, actually this is not the hormonal disorder. Goiter is due to the deficiency of iodine in the body, because iodine is required for the synthesis of thyroid hormone. If there is less iodine in the body, it will result into the less synthesis of the thyroid hormone or deficiency of thyroid hormone, resulting into the enlargement of the gland. Next. As you can see in the picture, this is the patient of goiter. Now in this case, this gland which is situated in the larynx area, because of the less iodine, the gland starts to enlarge just in the search of more and more iodine from the blood, okay, and it goes on spreading and you get this kind of appearance in goiter. So goiter is basically deficiency of iodine leading to the deficiency of thyroid hormone. Earlier slide. Next is Graves' disease. Graves' disease it is called because usually this disease used to take people to grave. That is why it is called as Graves' disease. It is a result of hyperactivity of the thyroid gland. Any tumor that causes the hyperactivity of the thyroid, okay, it causes excessive release of thyroid hormone. Naturally, you know, the thyroid hormone is the one that stimulates or it increases the metabolic rate of the body. So more thyroid, the person is very hyperactive, burns the calorie fast and therefore gets exhausted also fast. Okay, so hyperthyroidism, it usually used to result or it is resulting due to the excessive secretion of the thyroid hormone, maybe due to the tumor one, or it may be due to an autoimmune disease. You know what is autoimmunity? Autoimmunity is where the antibodies are synthesized against self. Usually body has its own mechanism by which self organs are known to the body, right? Now when this is lost, there are proteins which are targeted to the thyroid gland itself. They will be synthesized. They are called as LATs or long acting thyroid stimulators. These long acting thyroid stimulators will go on stimulating the thyroid gland, increasing its activity to several fold, really or resulting into Graves' disease. Okay, and next, as you can see, this is usually a symptom. This is called as exophthalmos. It is the symptom of Graves' disease. As you can see, the eyeballs are actually protruding out. This is one of the important symptom of the Graves' disease or hyperactivity of the thyroid gland. Earlier slide. Myxedema. Myxedema, where the gland produces inadequate. Now the opposite side, hypothyroidism. Less secretion of the thyroid hormone result into myxedema. So also cretinism. This particular disorder results into hypoactivity and therefore these people will be always, you know, having less metabolic activity, slow, sluggish, you know, burning their calories at a slow pace. So mostly these will be the slow acting people. Next slide. Next. Coming to the parathyroid gland. Parathyroid gland, usually most of the people will have 4 parathyroid glands situated just behind the thyroid glands. parathyroid gland secretes one of the most important hormone, and that is parathyroid hormone, and the function of parathyroid hormone is to control body's calcium level, and calcium is a very important mineral. This calcium level is increased by parathyroid hormone next by different mechanism. One, by increasing, this is the most important, by increasing absorption of calcium from the intestine, that is after digestion. It also increases the blood level of calcium by reabsorption of calcium from the kidney. Whereas in extreme case where there is no calcium at all left, there is no digestion, neither it is left in the to be reabsorbed from the urine, then the calcium stores will be affected, and you all know the calcium store of the body is bones. So these bones will be actually eaten away to get more and more calcium into the blood, resulting, maybe the bones become weak, fragile, okay. In such cases the fractures are very common, okay, because the bones become very fragile. The condition is called as osteoporosis. There are pore forms. Osteo means bones. So pores form in the bone called osteoporosis next. So that is the disorder of thyroid glands. Then, parathyroid gland. The next hormone is reproductive hormones. Reproductive hormones, female sex hormones and male sex hormones, that is follicle stimulating, luteinizing and luteinizing hormones. The target tissues therefore will be always the male and female reproductive system. Next, these reproductive hormones, naturally they are, especially in the females, they are required for the continuity of the menstrual cycle, whereas they are also playing very important role in the fertilization and reproduction. The disorders of reproductive hormones naturally will lead to the various disorders of reproductive system, including infertility and many others. The next hormone is human growth hormone or somatostatin. The chemical structure of this hormone, it is made up of amino acid, 191 amino acid. The function of the human growth hormone naturally is to increase the overall growth of the body, especially that of cartilage and bone. Next, disorders of growth hormone, you can see in this picture, excessive growth hormone. Excessive growth, the disorder is called as gigantism, whereas less growth hormone causes dwarfism. Naturally the cause can be tumor, injury, infection, or maybe it is genetic in nature. Next, prolactin, the last hormone secreted by anterior pituitary, and as I told you, it is especially important for milk secretion, or rather milk production. As far as milk secretion is concerned, oxytocin is more important. Milk production is concerned, prolactin is very important. Next, pancreatic hormone. Now with this we have finished with the pituitary control. Now we have to study two other tissues by which the hormone or the hypothalamus controls directly or has a direct control over the endocrine system. One of it is pancreatic tissue, which is just inside the stomach. Next, endocrine and exocrine. Next, as you can see here, these cells which are called as Purkinje cells, they are the exocrine cells. Exocrine means they secrete the digestive hormones digestive juices, whereas this area usually secretes the endocrine secretions, out of which two most important, alpha and beta cells. Alpha cells secrete glucagon, one of the most important hormone as far as glucose level is concerned, and second, beta cells secreting next. Four different types of cells. I have shown you the islets of Langerhans. Alpha cell, they secrete glucagon. Glucagon function is to increase the blood glucose level, whereas beta cells secrete insulin, very well known hormones. Its function is to decrease the blood glucose level. Central part mostly secretes central parts of the islets of Langerhans secretes this insulin. Delta cells secrete somatostatin, which inhibits glucagon synthesis, and the fourth less studied class or less known class is PP cells called pancreatic, or it secretes pancreatic polypeptide next. The control of the glucose level, when the blood glucose level goes low, naturally that causes, it gives the signal, stimulus to the pancreas. Pancreas in response to the low glucose level secrete insulin. Okay. Then the insulin which is secreted then controls the excessive glucose, which is then with the help of insulin it will be taken up by the different tissue and the glucose level is brought back to the normal. This situation especially takes place after digestion. When we have our food, the food gets digested, right, and excessive glucose is poured into the blood. The moment the glucose level shoots up, the insulin, the message goes to the pancreas, pancreas secretes insulin. Insulin immediately causes many cells to take up more and more glucose from the blood, so that the glucose level of the blood starts decreasing. Now when it goes below the normal level, as you can see, normal level is up to 110 milligram per cent. When it goes below the normal level, what happens is then again the signal goes to the pancreas. Now pancreas alpha cells secrete glucagon, and now glucagon causes release of glucose especially from the liver, and then the blood glucose level rises and brought back to the normal. Okay, so this usually pancreatic hormones are mostly important for controlling the blood glucose level next. Disorders of pancreatic hormone, we all know this. Diabetes mellitus, it is the best or well known endocrine disorder caused due to the deficiency of insulin. It is marked by elevated blood glucose level. Symptom is excessive thirst, excessive urination, hyperglycemia, excessive blood glucose, slow healing process throughout. Next. Two types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes called insulin dependent. It is an autoimmune disorder which immune system destroys the pancreatic beta cells. So it basically results into very less secretion of insulin, but it can be then treated with the insulin injections. Therefore, it is called as insulin dependent. Type 2 diabetes, it is called as non-insulin dependent diabetes. It involves the insulin deficiency or reduced response to the target cells. If you remember, I had told you some time back about receptors. Okay, hormones are important, but if the cells do not have the receptors, then it is difficult for hormone. Even if hormone is there in the body, it cannot do its function. The similar things happen here, type 2 diabetes, where the insulin is there, but there are no insulin receptors on the target cell, and hence insulin injections are of no use here, because insulin, there is no problem with the insulin, right? So this type of disorder is much danger, okay, much life threatening than the type 1 diabetes. Next, pineal glands. These are the few glands which are pineal gland, which is again situated just below the hypothalamus. It establishes day and night cycle. It is especially contributing or setting your biological clock. Promotes sleepiness in small doses. The sleep especially is controlled by the hormone, this melatonin, which is secreted by pineal gland. Next, thymus gland, thymosin, it promotes the production of T cell lymphocytes. Next. Okay, now apart from these major glands, there are some glands or organs that produce some other important hormones, like stomach, which is producing gastrin, which is important in the digestion. Small intestine, secretin and cholecystokinin, especially important in protein digestion. Heart, arterial natriuretic peptide regulates blood pressure. Kidneys, erythropoietin stimulates blood cell production. Next. Yeah, there are some few interesting hormones which I would like to emphasize on. dopamine. These hormones I am talking to you about now, they are called as feel-good hormones. Okay, nowadays they are famous as feel-good hormone. You can see dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain. However, it is especially related to the pleasurable feelings, leaves you feeling blessed or a blissful feeling. It is associated with the craving, desire, motivation, goal-oriented behavior, attentive focus and addiction. Adrenaline especially, it makes you feel excited, anxiety. Many of us must have felt this sometime in the life. Okay, this anxious behavior always, if you see there is elevated adrenaline levels, is because of elevated adrenaline level, or you can say in such emotions the adrenaline is secreted more. It causes feeling of excitement, nervous, anger, fear. Next, serotonin. Serotonin is called as antidepressant hormone. When the serotonin is secreted, usually one starts feeling happier, more optimistic, satisfied. This kind of feeling is given by serotonin. Endorphin, another important hormone, they are called as feel-good chemicals. They are the natural painkillers. They are lowering stress and they give general feeling of well-being. Next, oxytocin. We have seen the function of oxytocin. Another important function of oxytocin is it causes affectionate feeling for others, increases trust, makes you feel or makes you see the people in more positive light. So these hormones increase your positivity to the life. Next, in summary, we have organs of the endocrine system secrete hormones which are directly into the blood. That is why they are called as endocrine, right? Then other body and into the other body fluids, hormones which are secreted by one endocrine gland is then taken to the different, and in the relay they act. These are the different endocrine organs which we have seen. Next. Yeah, thank you so much. The last message, it's not the stress that kills us, but our reaction to it definitely does. Thank you so much. There are certain references. Next. These are few references. I have referred to the books. Important books for biochemistry like Leninger, Satyanarayanan, Guyton and John and Willie. There are some internet links also you can take down. Thank you so much for listening to me.